When I was a kid, I lived in Irving, Texas, 609 Colony Drive, to be exact. This was a vintage baby boomer neighborhood. It was flooded with kids of all ages, young families, wood-paneled station wagons, and there's a yes. Somebody had one. And block parties every holiday. Honestly, it was a phenomenal place to grow up. Well, this was me back yeah. It usually has that effect on people. But this was in my early days on Colony Drive, and this was a picture that only a mother could love. Our little street had about 20 homes, and most of them looked exactly alike, except for one. It was just down the street from our house. It looked kind of like this. You know, we were smart kids, and we knew what a haunted house looked like. And it was a haunted house. The people who lived there were like really old. It was an old man and an older lady, and they were in their 50s. And hey, sorry, if it's there, you got to wear it, okay? And so, but these folks never came out at night. I mean, they only came out at night. They never came out during the day. They never talked to anybody. We thought these people had been bitten by bats. Except for one thing. During the day, there was always something going on in their backyard. Chainsaws. Machines big enough to dig holes just the right size for kids. Loud, sadistic laughter. It was hideous. Everyone in the neighborhood had nothing to do with this house. You know, my dad was my hero, but even my dad, I think he was scared of this place as well. When he got really mad at us, because there was a whole bunch of us, he would threaten to take us and dump us at this house. Now, you know, Child Protective would have called us, you know, back in those days, but they never did. We knew if that happened, we'd never be heard from again. We knew that our faces would be on milk cartons, and these scary old people down the street would be happier than ever. This morning, I want to take you on a journey together through one of the most bizarre, powerful, important, and yes, even a bit scary stories in the life and the ministry of Jesus. We see this story in all three of the Synoptic Gospels. You see it in Matthew 8, Mark 5, and then again in Luke 8. In the verses immediately preceding this, we see, and we're familiar with the story, when Jesus and his disciples were on a boat ride across the Sea of Galilee. Now, folks, the Sea of Galilee would be like a small lake in Texas, okay? It's smaller than Lake Conroe. And so it didn't take a long time to get across the Sea of Galilee, but a terrible storm came up. And maybe you know the story. Jesus picked a really bad time to take a nap. And so he's asleep in the boat, and the disciples think, we're going to die. We're all going to drown in this sea. And so they wake Jesus up, and he goes over and he looks in. Sure enough, the waves are crazy and the wind is up, and he just calms them. And he did what he always did. He solved the problem. The disciples asked the obvious question, who then is this that even the wind and the seas obey him? Well, perhaps the storm had confused them, and maybe they've forgotten the words of Psalms 89, which says, O Lord God of hosts, who is like you, O mighty Lord? Your faithfulness also surrounds you. You rule the raging of the sea. When the waves rise, you still them. So we're going to be in Luke 8 this morning, if you have your Bibles, and we'll begin with the account beginning in verse 26. It says, Then they sailed to the country of the Gerasenes, which is opposite of Galilee. That's like saying that South Korea is opposite of North Korea, that the Bahamas are opposite of Greenland, that Texas is opposite of Oklahoma. And so those two things didn't have a lot together. And so this was a huge moment. It was the first trip that Jesus made into the land of the Gentiles. On the Galilee side of the sea was everything the disciples knew, they were comfortable with, and they were content in. On the other side, let's just say it was pretty unclean, pretty unrighteous, and pretty unfit. That other side where the Gentiles lived and worked, that was no man's land if you were a Jewish person. And Jesus had an appointment. He had an appointment with a man who was becoming a legend in that area. So here we see the situation unfold. Verse 27, and when he came out onto the land, he was met by a man from the city who was possessed with demons. You see, Jesus was intentional throughout his ministry. He wasn't far from the graveyard. But notice something, when you think about the ministry of Jesus, the totality of the ministry, he would go from town to town, city to city, and he would preach and teach, right? But Jesus passed a lot of graveyards. He didn't stop at every one. He stopped at probably a very few. He stopped at this one. Just like Jesus, we should pray for God's leading, his direction as we determine the plans of our lives, even on a daily basis. You might notice, by the way, that Jesus gets off the boat, right? Meets the man. You may ask, well, where were the disciples? Oh, they were there. They were on the back of the boat, right? They were like, hey, Jesus, we're with you. We're behind you. Way, 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 way behind you. You see, it was Jesus solo to meet the man that the people were talking all about. Was this visit between Jesus and this madman from Gerasene? Was it intentional or simply an interruption? You can determine that for yourself, but I would remind you that in Luke 8:22, it says this, let us go to the other side of the lake. Was Jesus just checking out the sights? Was he looking for a nice sunset cruise on Sea of Galilee? No. Jesus knew exactly what lay beyond on the other side of the sea. As we dig into this passage this morning, I want you to see a number of important things. First, we see the appointment. Jesus had an appointment. The man he meets is controlled by unclean spirits. Not just one, but many, many evil forces. And they were bent on destroying the image of God in this pitiful man. They were called Legion. Though they acted in different ways at times, they spoke as one. This is the most detailed description of a demon-possessed man that we find in the Bible. And it fits the classic profile of demonic possession. This man is homeless by choice and, frankly, by action. He had been cast out from among the normal people. There was nothing normal about his life in any way. He'd been driven out of the city by the townspeople because they were threatened by him. He was a threat to the people. He was a threat to their way of life. And frankly, he was a threat even to himself. He lived more like a wild animal than he did a human being. He had now found his home among the dead, living in the tombs. A man very much alive, but associated with things that were very dead. It says he was naked and unafraid. Clothes had long since departed from this man. They were ripped off as he had fits of anger and uncontrollable impulses and emotions. The man was out of control. He was tormented and self-destructive. Mark chapter 5, verse 5 says that he was crying out and he was ripping his flesh with stones. It's hard for us to even imagine what kind of man this was. See, what about the townspeople? What about the people that watched this every day or knew about it? What did they do? Well, I think the townspeople had tried both to help and to hinder this man. Verse 29 says, and he was bound with chains and shackles and kept under guard, and yet he would break his bonds and be driven by the demon into the desert. Notice that the people did lots of external things. They put chains on him. They probably put ropes on him. They probably put shackles. They thought of everything and they tried everything and nothing worked because the issue was not an external problem. It was an internal problem. The man is in the process of being destroyed mentally, physically, emotionally, and he was as good as dead spiritually. In fact, this man was in the worst of the worst way in life. Some of you would say, Eric, I've been there. Now, maybe you have, but most folks have never come close to this man. It was the worst of the worst in the worst way. Living among the dead, a dead man literally walking. He was an outcast even among a community of people who themselves were outcast. And that's who Jesus set out to meet that day. The fact is, this pitiful man had a lot of needs. You could probably write a book on that. He just had so many things that needed to be fixed in his life, but Jesus didn't go there. He didn't try to address every need. He tried to address the main concern at hand. You say, well, what is that? Look at Luke 4:18. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, Jesus says, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free. That was the mission of Jesus that day. And friends, that is still the mission of Jesus today. So we see that there was an appointment, but there was also a challenge. Seeing Jesus, he cried out and fell before him and said in a loud voice, "What business do we have with each other, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me." For he had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. Jesus faces the enemy at his worst and at his most obvious. The enemy could not kill this man, but he could do anything and everything possible to destroy his past, his present, and his future. And friends, let me assure you that that is still the way the enemy works in our lives today. This isn't the plump, red, little pitchfork guy hanging from the ceiling of my favorite taco shop, which I love to go to. No, indeed, he is our enemy in every way, committed to our destruction and demise. John 10 gives the MO of the demonic host and Satan himself. The thief comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy. You say, "Oh, Eric, those are so harsh words." There are no words that can describe what the enemy's plan for us. It is harsh enough. Eric, why this poor guy? What did he do to cause all of the demons to come into his life? We don't know the answer to that question. Perhaps he opened himself up to these kinds of things. Perhaps he was involved in things that he shouldn't have been involved in. We don't know. But what we do know is, and it's a very simple truth, is that Satan and his legions see the image of God in all of us. And in all of us, he sees in humankind the image of God. And because of that, we become target number one. Target number one in his quest to discredit and to challenge any work of God. Genesis 1 says, "So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them." We are the image bearers of God. And we're surprised that the enemy wants to do business with us. You say, "Well, Eric, I don't really worry about that demon stuff, that devil stuff. Thanks for sharing, but, it's not really my thing. I'm a Christian. I'm a believer. I know Jesus. Got the power of the blood, and I'm not making light of that." Well, let me assure you of something. Our enemy still wants to discredit God. He'll take down your Christian witness. He'll take down your reputation. He will try to destroy your influence. He can deceive and he can intimidate even the strongest of believers. He laughs at our fake religion. He laughs when we love ourselves more and more and more, even more than perhaps the way we love the Lord. Well, some of you are on the other side of this. You're like, Eric, you don't have to convince me that the devil's real. Listen, I mean, I'm seeing it all over my life. He's crushing my life right now. I don't really have any magical potion to give you. I can tell you this, though. In high school, I learned a verse that has been a blessing to me since. 1 John 4:4 says what? Greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world. You know, nothing that we've seen so far in this brief study would give us any reason to think that in any way this man is in his right mind. But I have to tell you, when I read verse 27, it says that the man is running to Jesus. Look, if I was demon-possessed, I think I'd be running the other side. I'd be going that way. I don't want any part of the Son of God. It says as soon as Jesus met the man on the shore, there was an encounter. What's up with that? I mean, what was going on here? Was it a moment of clarity like, you know, the clouds parted and sunlight came and sanity just showed up? Or was it simply a twisted effort by the enemy to control the situation, to change the narrative? It's the latter. The liar and deceiver, he never changes. Listen, let me say it again to you. You need to hear this. Things don't change. He is a liar and a deceiver and has been from the beginning. He never changes. We see this clearly in verse 28. Note the three statements that Legion gives to Jesus. He says, "What business do we have with each other, Jesus?" Now, I don't know that this is true, and so I may have to ask Jesus when I see him when I get to heaven, but I think he had a smirk on his face, okay? You say, well, what did he say? Jesus didn't respond to the man, to the silly question of the man. You see, the demons didn't have any business with Jesus. But folks, Jesus had all kinds of business with the devils of hell. And then the Son of the Most High God. You say, well, Eric, what were the devils doing? What was he up to? Was he just kind of helping the townspeople to know that this man was not just a good man, he was actually the Son of God? I mean, maybe that was a good thing. No, the demons were trying to change the narrative to fit their desires. In that day, the use of someone's name indicated some level of power and authority over them. And the more descriptive that name was, the more authority you possessed over them. You say, well, I don't really understand that. Oh, yeah, you do. Do you remember when your mom, when you were growing up, your mom said, hey, I need you to take out the trash, okay? I don't know, we had 45 kids in our family, and so, we all had chores and stuff, and my job was to take out the trash. And so my mom would say, in her motherly, momish, loving, sweet, kind voice, Eric, sweetie, would you please take out the trash for me? And I would say, oh, I would love to. And about 3 days later, I would remember that I had promised that I would take out the trash, but she did not forget. And so she would come into the living room and she would say something to the effect of, John Eric Hystad, because she was at this point demon-possessed. And so she would say, John Eric Hystad, the trash. She knew my name. She said my name. And that woman was in control. Catch it. The demons knew Jesus' name. The demons knew who he was. They said his name. But the demons were not in control of Jesus. James 2:19 says, you believe that there is one God, good. Even the demons believe that, and they shudder. Finally, Legion says something else. He says, I beg you, do not torment me. Perhaps Legion was appealing to the kindness and the character of God's mercy and love and his character. Perhaps that's what was going on. More likely, they were trying to put off the inevitable. You say, what do you mean? Matthew 25:41 says, then he will say to those that is left, you that are accursed, depart from me into the eternal fire prepared for you, the devils and the angels. By the way, how ironic it is that the very thing that Legion was doing to this poor man, they begged Jesus not to do to them. So there's an appointment, there's a challenge, and then there's a response. It says, now there was a herd of many swine feeding there on the mountain, and the demons implored him to permit them to enter the swine, and he gave them permission. And the demons came out of the man and entered the swine, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and was drowned. You know, I don't like reading that passage. It just seems really harsh. I mean, I like animals. I mean, you know, I'm not sure I would describe myself as, I'm just an animal lover. But I like animals. I don't want to see animals hurt. Some of you are absolute animal lovers, and this verse just goes all over you. You'd say, Eric, so you're saying that Jesus hated pigs? No, I don't think Jesus hated pigs. He was Jewish, so there's that. But I mean, I don't think he hated pigs. But folks, what I can tell you with full assurance, I do think it's safe to say that Jesus really, really loves one sick and afflicted man over 2,000 pigs.
Make it plain.
The heart's cry of one devastated life. The heart's cry of one devastated life. Can you see me, Jesus? That was the question he was asking. That was answered by a clear and powerful response. Jesus said, I not only see you, but I know you. And I love you enough to take you from the place where you currently are. By the way, why did Jesus agree to the demon's request? Send us into those pigs, Jesus. Why did Jesus do that? Jesus allowed this because the time of the full demonstration of his power over the demonic forces and the demons themselves had not yet come. You say, when would that come? It came at the cross. Colossians 2 says, at the cross he disarmed the rulers and authorities. He made a public display of them, a spectacle of them, as it were, having triumphed over them through him. See the appointment, challenge, response, but there's something else. This crazy story points to some things that we need to apply and understand for even our own lives today. There were some results. One, they sent Jesus away. I'm like, what? What were they thinking? They weren't. The pig keepers, townspeople, the city fathers, the average Joes and Joettes that were there that day, they were too overwhelmed by what had happened. They couldn't think correctly. When the herdsmen saw what had happened, they ran away and reported it in the city and out in the country. That means everywhere. The people went out to see what had happened, and they came to Jesus and found the man from whom the demons had gone out, sitting down at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind, and they became frightened. How odd is that? Those folks who were just catching up and all the stuff that was going on, they come and find out that the star attraction, who is not the man who was healed, but who is the Son of God, Jesus. They see this man healed, calm, in his right mind, and he's got some snazzy-looking clothes on, sitting right next to Jesus, and they are blown away. Right. And it says they were so happy. They were thrilled beyond measure. They're like, our long nightmare is over. No, it says they were frightened. It says they were frightened. Then they took stock of things, and they considered their options. I think they probably took a vote. And they said, you know what? I think it's time for you to go, Jesus, why don't you hit, come on, let's go. Get on the boat, go back to the other side. And guess what? He did. He left. You say, well, I have a question. Why were they afraid? What was so frightening about Jesus? Well, some ideas. I think they probably were wondering, you know what? What else is Jesus going to mess up in our life? I know this sounds weird, but listen. I mean, that demon guy that howled at night and caused all the problems, and we had to, redirect the way we traveled. He may be crazy, but he's our crazy. They looked at Jesus and said, hey, literally because of what happened this morning, these poor pig keepers, they can't even pay their rent this month. Jesus, we like the way things were before you started doing your stuff. We want our normal life back. I think there are some times in our lives that when Jesus is speaking to our hearts and you hear his voice and you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's going to get real abnormal here if I follow through here. They may have thought, well, what if that healed man that's sitting right over there talking to Jesus, all calm and stuff, what if he starts thinking clearly enough to remember all the bad things that the townspeople have done to him, all the things that they have said? Was this man keeping the receipts? But probably the worst, and probably the thing that drove them the most, the reason why they were so frightened, they're probably thinking, what's up with the legion now? You know what? We were really now okay because all those demons were in that guy. But if they come back, they're ours. They had missed the entire point. 2,000 pigs did a cliff dive that day in order to free the man from this demonic horror show that he was living, to remind them every day that he was free indeed. His oppressors were gone. They were done with. For when Jesus changes a life, it is changed forever. Amen. Something else. A changed life stands out. That's another result. A changed life stands out. This man's life had stood for all the wrong reasons for a very long time. And now, this man is the only one that we know of that was having anything to do with Jesus. Jesus did this amazing miracle, and now everybody is running around in a tizzy trying to figure out how to respond to all of this, and this dude is over here having a chat with Jesus. Now, you can consider me a bit simplistic and naive. I'll take it. It seems to me that a person whose life has been changed by Jesus will want to hang out with said Jesus. They will want to do all they can to make his name famous in their own life and in the lives of the people that they care about. They will love and enjoy hanging out with other people who also have experienced life change. And they won't have to be begged to come to worship and to learn more about God and his word. Why? What could possibly make those changes? Because your life was changed by Jesus. One other thing. It's also something we can pull from this. The life was changed with purpose. Jesus speaks to the man and says, return to your house. Describe what great things God has done for you. Think about it for a second. I mean, the man asked Jesus, can I go with you? And Jesus said, no. I mean, I'm kind of thinking, you know what, Jesus? That was probably a good idea. I mean, Jesus, think about it. Now, look, the disciples, I mean, they could be goofy at times, but the disciples are pretty sharp. I mean, this could have been a big deal. They get back on the boat, they go back to Judah, and all of a sudden now they can establish a national evangelistic network. They could have like Billy Graham crusades. I mean, good night. Jesus is the preacher, and then the testimony would be some dude who was literally had 2,000 demons in him, and he could stand up and say, I don't know what to tell you except Jesus changed my life. Listen, I went to Billy Graham crusades. I love the testimonies. None of those testimonies could hold water to that testimony. Why didn't they do that? It's not God's plan. Jesus says to him, friend, You are my first missionary. You're my first missionary. And the man fulfilled his purpose. It says he went home. He showed his family and friends. They were scared to death, but they were like, we can't deny the obvious. And it says, then he went into the city, and all these people who were scared to death of this guy, wanted nothing to do with him, all of a sudden they couldn't ignore it. He's just different. And then it says he went to the Decapolis. You say, what's the Decapolis? The Decapolis were the 10 cities that were represented in that area, including Damascus. And so the guy started at home, went to the city, and then went to the world that he knew of. What does that sound like? I'll tell you. It sounds like what Jesus said right before he was ascended to heaven. When he says, you and you and you and you and you and you and me, we are to be his witnesses in Jerusalem, in Judea, in Samaria, and the remotest parts of the earth. Oh, by the way, it says that everyone was amazed. Friends, people are always amazed, even today. They are. When you see a life changed by God, you are amazed as well. Amen. If you know Christ today, if you've bent your knee and your heart to Jesus and he is your Lord, I can promise you something. Listen closely. You have a message. You have a message. Whether you speak that message ever, it doesn't matter. You have a message and you have an impact. Whether you desire that to be, you have an impact. He says the same thing to you and to me today. Return to your house and describe what great things God has done for you. One quick final word this morning. We'll soon gather here in a couple of weeks to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. This has been a kind of a somber, difficult passage because of the terrible situation this guy was in, how bad he was, right? Well, I'm reminded of another man who was also an outcast, despised and rejected by many, accused of being out of his mind crazy, his body abused and racked with pain and shame by his own nakedness, saying things that made no sense, mumbling things like, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. But the one who freed the demon-possessed man and gave him his life back, and the one who died on a cross of death, they are one and the same. Because of his work on that cross and his power over death, today, you and I can celebrate. In 2 weeks, when we gather here on Resurrection Sunday, all of us can also celebrate the Lord. That poor guy in Luke 8 was asking a simple question. You boil it all down, here's what that guy was asking. Jesus, do you see me? Jesus, do you see me? And he did that day, my friends. And he still does. Perhaps you're here and you're like, Eric, I don't feel like he sees me at all. Perhaps you're walking around in a graveyard of your choice, or maybe several. He still sees you. Perhaps the mistakes you're making, you're repeating them at every chance. He still sees you. Perhaps you've tried and you've made promises and it never changes. He still sees you. Perhaps you're really, really good and your activities are all moral and wonderful, but your heart has grown cold. He still sees you. Whatever graveyard you're walking around in today, folks, he sees you. And he wants you to give your heart and your life to him if you are already a believer. He wants you to come back and say, Lord, my heart grieves today. You've given me a job to do and an opportunity to fulfill, and I have not done it. I come back to you today. Give myself fully to your plan for my life. Why? Because I want to be able to say, like this man said, God has done great things for me.